This probably goes without saying, but I really like this game's art style. It's bright, cartoony, and over the top, and helps to make it stand out from the pack of 3D platformers. Plus, the animation work, while a little weird looking at times, is very well done and reminiscent of rubber hose cartoons, just in a 3D space. I also like the small bits of dialogue you get from the NPCs in this game. While none of them actively made me laugh, many of them were funny enough to make me smile, and a few offered some tidbits about the various characters in the world. Enjoy it while you can, because we'll be speeding past most of these guys in a moment. Oh, okay, that's how Penny's yo-yo came alive and gave her all these new abilities? Like, I don't know what I was expecting from this game. I guess maybe her yo-yo would just be alive from the get-go in this clearly cartoony world, but just happening upon a cosmic string that makes the yo-yo come to life? I don't know, that feels a little too convenient, especially since we'll soon see the story literally cannot progress without the yo-yo being alive. The tutorial section of this game does its job pretty well. It conveys to you all your main abilities in the style of an old 3D platformer, and it gives you all the space needed to test them out, with plenty of room for error. It's just a shame that it doesn't tell you about the one part of the gameplay that kills it for me. The game also has hand-drawn cutscenes, and while they don't have much in the way of actual animation, they still look really good. Honestly, it makes me think the characters work better in 2D than in 3D sometimes. Wait, hold on. Why are you blaming Penny for this? Like, I can go with the already stupid yet funny premise of this game on its own, but in context, you clearly saw that Penny's yo-yo did that all on its own. Yeah, the yo-yo belongs to Penny, but she clearly tried to stop it before it disrobed Emperor Eddie. She's not at fault here. Okay, I'm not sure many of you are gonna like what I'm about to say, but I gotta be honest, this game controls like complete garbage. Normally in a 3D platformer, especially one centered around movement, you would want to feel in complete control at all times. However, Penny over here is apparently wearing roller skates because she is so damn slippery, yet somehow stiff at the same time. Whenever you make any sort of turn, Penny feels the need to slide a little bit like she's Lightning McQueen about to make a drift, and when you jump, she quickly loses all forward momentum and drops like a rock. If that already sounds frustrating, your abilities make it even worse. Your dash sends you flying way too far and often leads to you overshooting a lot of jumps. Your swing can sometimes save you, but also barely helps to make higher jumps. And riding the yo-yo is the worst because this thing will slide even more than Penny already does. And remember, this game is centered around not just movement, but also doing tricks to keep your combo up and get a high score. So I had to deal with slippery controls and even more slippery abilities for the entire game. Yeah, I did eventually get some kind of grasp on the controls, but the unruly nature of them never went away. If your 3D platformer relies entirely on movement and flow, yet your controls are total garbage, then clearly you did something very wrong here, and it's gonna cost you 5 sins. And unfortunately, it's not the only persistent problem with this game because the penguins are also here. No, not those penguins. Those guys are actually fun. These guys are nothing but a nuisance. What's wrong with them, you ask? Well, you know how in Yoshi's Island, if you lost Baby Mario and didn't get him back in time, a bunch of Bowser's minions would swoop in and carry him away? Well, imagine if those enemies were the main enemy type for the entire game. That's what the penguins are. They'll swarm you on sight and latch onto you, ruining your combo, and if enough of them latch onto you, you'll lose a hit point. Okay, that's not so bad, just defeat them before they can latch onto you, I hear you say. But that's the problem. You can't. No matter how much you hit them with your yo-yo, they will always get back up. And if they can still chase you, they always will. The only way to get rid of them is to either trick them into falling off a ledge, smack them into a wall, which works for some reason, or just outrun them until they can't get to you anymore. What kind of 3D platformer has only one enemy type and makes it completely unkillable? Yeah, they do introduce other versions like green penguins that jump good and red penguins that are big, but they all serve the same purpose: to get in your way and never stay dead, like a mob of colorful cockroaches. Okay, enough bashing this game for now. How about something a bit more positive, like collectibles? Each stage has two types of collectibles present, showpieces and denizen dilemmas. The showpieces are these giant medals hidden throughout the level, and there are 3 in each level. While a few of them can be rather obtusely hidden, I enjoy picking these up, and they were mostly easy to find off the beaten path. The denizen dilemmas, meanwhile, are miniature challenges that usually involve picking up a few items, delivering something in a certain amount of time, or just doing a bunch of tricks. Admittedly, some of these can be frustrating to accomplish for one reason or another, not helped at all by the bad controls, but thankfully most of them were a cinch and kind of fun to do. At least this game can do collectibles, right? When you reach the end of a stage, you get a chance to perform a busker bonus, which is basically a series of QTEs that have Penny perform a bunch of tricks that can increase your overall score, and it can fluctuate depending on where you land on the ending stage. These are a nice capper to the levels, even the ones that can be frustrating, and it's just fun to see Penny do her thing. And if you manage to get a high enough score from doing tricks, collecting coins, and getting all 3 showpieces and denizen dilemmas, you're rewarded with a piece of concept art to be viewed in the extras menu. While they aren't required for 100%, thank goodness, it is nice to have some kind of reward for doing well, especially when you have to put up with such cumbersome controls. So this game has a couple power-ups to its name, and the first one it introduces is the burger power-up. Now, ignoring the oddly similar sound it makes to Mario's cat bell, this power-up enhances your yo-yo for a little bit, allowing it to break blocks and certain walls, as well as bowl through groups of penguins. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, it is. Except the same level it's introduced in also introduces the hammer, which can also break nearby blocks, and the only difference is that it's single use and doesn't have a time limit. I'm sorry, why is this here? Why would you implement 2 power-ups that basically do the exact same thing? Isn't that incredibly superfluous? The burger is already a good power-up that does its job well enough. The hammer doesn't need to exist. I don't really count the giant penguin ball as a boss fight. I mean, it's more of a chase sequence than anything, but it's a fairly decent chase sequence nonetheless. It goes on for just the right amount of time, and if you can wrangle the controls for a bit, it's actually kind of fun to run away from this big ball of penguins. They even work the hammer and burger power-ups in for a bit. Pretty neat. The next power-up introduces the cake, which upon spinning with the yo-yo will let you soar into the air and glide for a short while, as a cake does. Now, this isn't a bad power-up by any means. It does what it sets out to do, but I also don't really know what to say about it. It's your standard gliding power-up that just works. I can neither win nor sin it, so I guess this is technically my first stalemate in an era. The others were made by Piffle when he collabed with me and I collabed with him. What isn't a stalemate is the way the NPCs are designed. I know I said I like their little snippets of dialogue, but while I do, I don't especially like how they were designed from a character standpoint. The designs themselves aren't bad, it's just that despite differing dialogue, they all kind of blend together, and the only distinction between them is their outfits. They don't really make the world feel lived in, they're just kind of there to be mildly humorous, and that's assuming you even give them a chance to be as you're speeding through the levels. The fight against Sheila is technically the first actual boss of the game, and it's also the best in the game by virtue of being good. Yeah, you can imagine the kind of precedent that sets, but we'll get there when we get there. For now, I will compliment Sheila for having a fairly engaging fight. You gotta ride your yo-yo across the water while dodging her signature weapon, I have no idea what it's called, and when you reach her ship, you just dodge the weapon again, smack it into her to stun her, and then screw in a screw to fix up the ship. Do this about 3 times and you win. Pretty simple, but engaging regardless, and you got ample space to where the slippery yo-yo isn't too much of an issue. Plus the music is pretty good, really making the fight feel more intense than it actually is. Okay, I was wrong. There are a couple other enemy types in this game, but honestly, they're all white noise. Aside from an achievement from using the bowls as golf balls, they only have one gimmick to their name, and it's not even that special. The bowls charge, the birds kick tomatoes, and the puppets throw stuff at you. Real engaging there, folks. Luckily, the pepper power-up actually is engaging. It allows you to temporarily ride your yo-yo even faster across normally deadly areas of the levels, and it's pretty fun to ride at blistering speeds. Kinda reminds me of Yoshi's Dash Pepper from Super Mario Galaxy 2, and it weirdly feels less slippery than riding the yo-yo normally. Good stuff. The fight with Mr. Q is fine. I like the pool table arena, but all he does is jump around a bit, spin around a bit, and kick an orb at you that you can play ping pong with before knocking his head off and hitting into the holes. Once all the holes are filled, you win. It's a unique premise for sure, but the fight is so simple that it's not effective enough. I hesitate to call it outright bad, but I can't say it's good either. So we have another stalemate here. The Durian is the next power-up, and it's your standard temporary invincibility power-up like Mario's Power Star or Sonic's Invincible Item Box. Honestly, this feels underutilized. It rarely shows up in the levels, and even when it does, the only thing you do with it is run across lava for a little bit before it runs out. It doesn't even have a cool invincibility theme that plays while it's active. It may do its job fine enough, but I feel like it needs more uses to really be good. Okay, admittedly that was a good joke. I'll give that one a win. Bubblim was probably my favorite world to play through purely because of its aesthetic. It's a giant water park filled with geysers to ride up and giant wave pools to ride across. The latter is especially neat because I love wave pools so much, and I also like the music. It really makes you feel like an excited kid at a water park. It's just a shame that it's capped off by the Emperor Eddie fight, which is an absolute joke. And not in the sense that it's funny. I get that Emperor Eddie is meant to be kind of a joke villain, but that doesn't mean his boss fight should be. It's basically a worse version of Chief Chili's fight in Mario 64 DS. You just wait for him to charge, pull on the hook on his back, and fling him into the water. Do this 3 times, and you win. Yeah, the penguins will occasionally leap onto the platform, and Eddie will do a spin attack on the 3rd go, but neither makes much of a difference. They're really easy to avoid, and the fight barely lasts a minute. Our main antagonist, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, okay, we're in space now, apparently. I didn't know that the drain we clearly went down through somehow loops back around all the way up into what appears to be the far reaches of space. That totally makes sense. The Puppet Penny race is kinda boring. Like, it's functional, it works, and it has a decent amount of platforming and obstacles, but I just don't feel that engaged with it. It's really easy to outrun the puppet, and even easier to have a boatload more coins than it by the end. Maybe if the puppet did more to impede your progress or was a little faster, then the race would be a bit more fun. But as is, it's in one ear and out the other. It works for what it is, but that doesn't mean it's fun. Wait, hang on. You and Eddie split because you kept experimenting endlessly with your show, which caused Eddie to be overworked, yet he's the one that needs to apologize? Girl, you were the one constantly working him to the bone for the sake of innovation. Anyone would have gotten tired of it at some point. I understand wanting to always keep things fresh, but when it comes at the cost of your coworker and friend, it's not worth it at all. Penguinville was probably my least favorite world in the game, purely because it has some of the worst ice physics I've ever seen. If you thought Penny wasn't slippery enough, now she's gonna slide even more. And whatever you do, don't you dare ride the yo-yo across the ice, because if you do, you can kiss your steering goodbye. That shit's gone. Who seriously thought this was a good idea? Yeah, I know our game is already pretty slippery, but what if we made it even worse? Doesn't that sound amazing? Of all the voices to mimic, you just had to mimic mine. Hey, it wasn't intentional, it's just something I came up with. The magnet is the last power-up we have to talk about, and it allows you to be pulled to a certain point when you swing your yo-yo at a magnetic field. It's a fairly simple, but still enjoyable power-up despite its fairly situational uses. You can also use it to ride on the ceiling in some areas, which is always cool. The giant robot penguin actually isn't too bad of a fight. You gotta dodge its pecs and wait for a magnet to spawn in, and once it does, wait for the magnetic field to activate and go in for the offensive. It only takes 3 hits, but it can be fun while it lasts. It's not the best giant robot fight I've seen. In fact, I've seen a child do better, but it's still a competent, somewhat fun fight in its own right. I don't have much to say about Lawberry other than I guess it has a nice atmosphere. It's moody, imposing, and oppressive just like Judge Rufus, so I guess that's worth a win. Look, I'm doing my best to be positive. Contrary to what you might think, I don't like being this mean, especially not to an indie game. Which is unfortunate because the fight against Judge Rufus requires it. All you do is climb up the easiest platforms in the world, steal his gavel, and use it to break the weights on the scale you're on. Do it 3 times and, you guessed it, you win. What's even worse is that Judge Rufus has a whopping 1 attack, and that's lightning bolts that get progressively more frequent as you progress the fight. Yeah, he adds in a shockwave on the 3rd round, but it only fires once and is piss easy to avoid. Yet another boss that goes in one ear and out the other. So disappointing. Oh, now you decide to recognize that Penny's yo-yo is sentient? There's virtually no difference between this moment and what happened at the auditions. Why did it take you until now to see that the yo-yo is the one at fault here? I like that the music for Gala Night is a remix of Vanilla Town's music. It works since you're basically running through Vanilla Town again, just in a different context. For a final world, the Editorium is not too shabby. Each level incorporates every power-up you've used, except the Durian, weirdly enough, and the platforming is decently challenging throughout. Also, there's an achievement for knocking down all of Eddie's portraits in any given level, and I find that funny. Oh, hey Taboo, you were definitely a character that existed. I'm not the only one that forgot about her, right? Like, she was set up by Mr. Q and a couple NPCs before, she showed up at the end of World's Edge for a boss fight and a lore dump, and then she kinda disappeared for 5 whole worlds before randomly showing up here. For such a seemingly important character, she's done a whole lot of nothing this whole game. Alright, time for our final boss. Can this game end on a good note? Well, for the first phase, it's extremely similar to Eddie's fight back in Bubbling, just with some new attacks, like a spin move and throwing penguin balls at you. You just knock him into the stance with the burger power-up when he's stunned, and it ends with a brief QTE to fling him away. A slight improvement from the first fight, but not by much, if I can be honest. Luckily, there's a bit more after a brief cutscene of Eddie randomly mourning the loss of his partner and Taboo deciding to help him? I'm sorry, why would you do that? I know you see this all as an elaborate show, but Eddie clearly stated earlier that he intends to kill Penny. This man has murder on his mind, and all it takes for you to help him, despite being on Penny's side previously, is a half-baked, unearned, undeserved apology? Anyways, Taboo transforms Eddie into this huge colossus, and we get more phases to our final boss. Phase 2 is us using the pepper to ride fast on waves, dodging more penguin balls, and Phase 3 is us take to the skies with a cake to glide towards Eddie and dodge even more penguin balls and projectiles. Honestly, this is getting me pretty pumped for once. Let's keep this ball going. Oh, it's over. Wait, it's over? Oh, come on! Why is it that every time I think this game is going to deliver something excellent, it ends up falling flat on its face? You had something good here! All you needed was a couple more phases to reach that threshold. And it's not like you were out of options. Why not incorporate the magnet in some way, or do something actually creative with the durian? Heck, you didn't even need to waste a burger on Phase 1. Why not make the pointless hammer slightly less pointless in Phase 1 and save the burger for a later phase? This final boss reeks of so much potential, but we only get to see half of it actually realized, while the other half is utterly squandered. Honestly poetic, considering that's this whole game in a nutshell. But in any case, it's time for the post-game cleanup, and there honestly wasn't much left for me to do. I had managed to get all the collectibles and miscellaneous achievements during my initial playthrough, so the only thing left was beating all 15 Star Globe levels. These are basically small challenge levels to test your skill a bit, and at first, I actually found them to be kind of fun. Then they decided to crank up the bullshit with lava walls that you can't even graze without being sent back to the start, and the return of ice physics because they were just so good the first time. I cannot stress the amount of times I messed up, not due to any real skill issues, but due to the game being really unfair with its hit detection and borked physics. And I can only imagine how much harder it is to try to get the score requirement for the concept art in these stages. Oh wait, I don't have to, because I actually tried to do so before realizing the art was optional. Good thing too, because some of those stages don't feel like they were designed with that in mind. So to anyone brave enough to try to achieve that high score, good f***ing luck. When this game was first announced, I was honestly very interested in it. It looked like a fun, high-speed platformer with a fun tone and cool art style, and I even managed to snag it day one, only to drop it after the second world and not even bother finishing it until this video. You might say that colored my opinion a bit, but while it did to a degree, I really did want to enjoy this game during my playthrough. By all intents and purposes, this should be a slam dunk for me. It has a lot of things that I love in a 3D platformer, so whenever I found myself not enjoying it as much as I thought I would, I kept asking myself, why don't I like this game? Why don't I like this game? I puzzled and puzzled till my puzzler was sore, and eventually thought up something I hadn't before. The devs clearly cared about delivering a stylish, funny 3D platformer with banging music, but in their haste to deliver that, it seems they forgot about what matters most in a 3D platformer: the gameplay. Sure, some of it is here, but most of it feels lacking in so many ways to where I can't say that the game is good. Penny's Big Breakaway is style over substance, and by far one of the most disappointing games I've ever played. I wanted to like it so badly. It's made by the devs of Sonic Mania, for f***'s sake. I should love this game, but I just don't. I'm sorry to all the fans of this game watching this video, but I'm not one of you. And try as I might, I don't think I can be. But with all that said, that concludes the first ERA of the year. I'll be sure to make another poll asking which game you all want me to cover next the following day, and while I'm playing through that, I'll be hard at work at some other projects, namely a first impressions video of Persona 5 Royal, and afterwards, a video talking about some of my biggest gaming hot takes. It's about time I got some of those off my chest, and I got some spicy ones for you. See you next time, everybody.